Hello everyone. In this video we will be talking about the dispute of Pak Strait between India and Sri Lanka. The topic is coming up frequently in the news because many a times it has been seen that Sri Lankan Navy arrest Indian fishermen in the name or on the pretext that they have crossed the international maritime boundary line, right? But here the boundary line is so close and so not very well defined that knowingly or unknowingly it is generally crossed over by the poor fishermen, and they are arrested and many charges are generally implied upon them, and it is becoming very difficult for the countries to have their exchanges by setting them free from the country's clutches, right? So what happens is that this dispute it is talking about, that the context is Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu wrote to Prime Minister requesting him to secure the release of 29 fishermen and their 79 fishing boats from Sri Lanka. 29 fishermen, right? And they are along with their fishing boats and the earlier boats also. So it's like 79 boats have been held by the Sri Lankan authorities, and it is not the first case. Since many decades, like 1970s, Sri Lanka has been capturing Indian fishermen in the pretext of crossing over the international sea border or international maritime boundary line, right? And in the latest instance of high-handedness, Sri Lankan Navy has arrested 11 Indian fishermen and were taken to Mailati naval base in Sri Lanka, right? So what is this controversy, how the situation is, and what are the problem? As you can see that this is the Pak Strait, right? This area, it is generally the Pak Strait, and this red line is defining the international maritime boundary line between the India and the Sri Lanka, right? So here, as you can see in this map also, that this international maritime boundary, it is just passing the Pak Bay, right? And here between the Rameshwaram, there's like Thuthukudi and Tallimaran, right? In this region, the extreme points of the Sri Lanka, like it is Tallimaran, and the Indian side, the extreme point here, it is Thuthukudi, right? So this Thuthukudi and Tallimaran, here it is this international maritime boundary is crossing, right? And knowingly and unknowingly, like the people who are living in these coastal vicinities, they are going to the seas and high seas or deep seas for the fishing activities, and unknowingly they are generally crossing over the international maritime boundaries, and here the Sri Lankan navies generally arrest them. And this is how this problem remains in great issue and prominence, that we have to see here that what is the issue and how we can actually overcome this issue, right? So now before that, let's just talk about what is the Pak Bay. The Pak Bay is a narrow strip of water separating the state of Tamil Nadu in India from the northern province of Sri Lanka. Simple, right? It is the narrow water, narrow channel which is separating the state of Sri Lanka from the Tamil Nadu northern province. All right. Yes, the recording is on. Yes. So, and the bay, which is 137 kilometers in length, varies from 64 to 130 or plus kilometers in width, is divided by the international maritime boundary line, right? It is 137 kilometers in length, all right, which is and varies from 64 to 137 kilometers in the width, right? And it's bordering it are 5 Indian districts and 3 Sri Lankan districts. This is just the clarity about it, that from Indian side there are 5 districts, and from Sri Lankan sides it's just 3 districts that are coming into this arena. As you can see that these are the districts here, right, which are generally the points where all these issues are coming up. or the sectors or the districts, they are coming up. All right. Just a second, guys. Okay. Now, so what is the conflict about? Let's just talk about the conflict. In 1974 and 1976 treaties, they were signed between India and Sri Lanka to demarcate the international maritime boundary line, 74 to 76, under the treaties, right? And the small islet is the generally the rocky islands where no vegetation is grown and generally no people are living. So they are the lower form of islands, right? Because on islands life is possible, but on islets mostly it has been seen that no one is living there. So the small islet of Kachativu, right, used by the fishermen for sorting their catch and drying their nets, fell on the other side of the international maritime boundary line. All right, the Kachativu. The main problem with Indian fishermen is that a large number of them are dependent on fishing in Sri Lankan waters, which is prohibited by the 1976 Maritime Boundary Agreement. Because as you can see, that the international maritime boundary line, it is crossing so close to the Indian habitation regions that knowingly or unknowingly they will be passing through it, right? Yes. So this is the main issue, and the main issue is oversized fleet of Tamil Nadu trawlers that fish regularly in Sri Lankan waters. Trawlers greatly damage the ecosystem and hence are unsustainable way of fishing, and the Sri Lankan government recently passed a legislation banning the trawling in the Sri Lankan waters, right? So it is basically the location of the island and islets on the other side of the international maritime boundary line, which was settled between 1974 to 76 in the treaties between these two countries, right? And Indian fishermen generally they sought their catch in the Kachativu island, which is hitherto in the other side. And as per the International Maritime Boundary Act, the use of big trawlers is banned in the international Sri Lankan waters, whereas the Tamil Nadu fishing communities majorly they are dependent upon the big trawlers while going for the fishing in the region. So hence it is again a problem of spoiling the ecosystem and also problem of crossing the international maritime boundary without any permits, right? So what is government doing for this? The international maritime boundary is imaginary, right? It is based on the lines of the seas, but it was geotagged and visible to the fishermen due to global positioning system. That is the biggest thing, right? And deep sea fishing scheme, they're promoted as an alternative to bottom trawling by Tamil Nadu fishermen of the Park Bay. The scheme says that the provision of 2,000 deep sea fishing boats in place of trawlers by 2019 and 20. That means the alternative to bottom trawling of the parks, it is basically promoted as an alternative. That means that without using any trawlers, that bottom trawling can be used for the deep sea fishing, and as many as 2,000 deep sea fishing boats are provided, right, instead of the trawlers. Then strengths of India-Sri Lanka relations, if we talk about that, the first responder to Sri Lanka 2004 tsunami, it was India's Easter attacks, right? And PM visit after Easter attacks, shared culture steeped in similar myths, legends, advent of Buddhism to Sri Lanka during Ashoka's period when Ashoka's children went to these Anuradhapura, host ties with ancient India. So we are talking about the strength these two countries are sharing. Now, India is time-tested ally, oppose United Nations resolution for probe into Sri Lankan excesses. Pakistan and China favored the resolution, right? So that means that India did not support the United Nations resolution for the inquiries within the Sri Lankan when it comes to the violation of human rights because of the very long civil war that went from 1989 in Sri Lanka till 2009 and 10, right? Then Civil nuclear cooperation agreement with Sri Lanka. It is the first with any country. It was made by India. Then India has been maintaining Sri Lanka's autonomy against international investigators, as well as prompting Sri Lanka to provide justice and power to minority Tamils. India's abstinence from voting in United Nations Human Rights Council resolution against Sri Lanka civil war. Already we have seen that. Then what are the weaknesses of our relation with Sri Lanka? Growing influence of China is the biggest problem, because building of Lotus Tower in Colombo, China now accounts for 18% of Sri Lankan import, right? And India, a Sri Lankan member of BRI, Border Road Initiative, right? The Sri Lanka is itself a member of Border Road Initiative by China. India's FDI was more than China for Sri Lanka in 2015, but reversed in by 2018. So that means China started making more economical influence within the country. India's waning influence and growing resentment for India. Scrapping of Hambantota port, originally offered to India and given to China under the Chinese maritime silk route policy, it was a drawback for India, and it was just a negative side approach for the relations between India and Sri Lanka. Then serious ethnic issues, the Sinhala and Tamil war, crime probes and accountability issues, that India entered that, and since then the Tamil sentiments with the central government has been at halt, right? Because it is believed that central government did much excesses against the Tamilian population within the Sri Lankan region during the civil war time, right? Then what could be the possibility that we can explore with this issue, that like what could be the thing? The first thing is that we have to control this unnecessary passing of the Indian fishermen from going to that side. What happens is that there is no well defined maritime boundary, as we have seen, right? So the trespassing of Indian fishermen is very frequent in Sri Lankan waters, right? So between 1983 to 2009, Indian fishermen had easier access to the rich Sri Lankan waters, as the maritime boundary in the Park Strait was not heavily guarded, right? But since 2009, it was the time when the Sri Lankan civil war got ended. The Sri Lankan Navy has tightened surveillance of its northern maritime boundary to halt a potential return of Tamil insurgents. And this in turn has had the secondary effect of increasing the number of arrests of Indian fishermen. So what could be the alternative provision here? We have to just see that we have to stop our people from going their side and unnecessarily getting trapped into the international litigations, right? So what could be the way forward here? That the damage to the Indian fishermen could be ameliorated if the announcement is followed by two steps, right? The trawlers can be used in the Odisha coast where waters are very deep, and hence the Sri Lankan waters territorial boundaries is generally crossed. So there is no problem. Then the Tamil Nadu fisheries departments have no seriously monitor, control and carry out surveillance mechanism of the decommissioning processes. Beyond the deep sea vision, other solutions such as buybacks, alternative livelihoods and skill developments needed to be rolled out in this context, so that people are not only dependent on the fishing, and if they are going for the fishing, then there must be provision of the alternative routes, and hence the newer techniques can be given to them, so that the people are not directly involved here, and hence promotion of skills and alternative employment generations with the credit extension to the people involved in this area, especially in the 5 districts where international maritime boundary is closing nearby. So in that sense, we can prevent our people from going their side, and also we can speak to international community to the Sri Lankan authorities, so that a common passing system can be evolved in which the ships are authorized that can go beyond to that side. Otherwise, from Indian waters only, they are not allowed to cross to that side, because there is a free hand right now, so they are easily going there. But if the tagging is done in such a way, and the domestic counters are being made where the Indian boats are stopped from going to the international water freely, so then only the pass holder or the permit holding ships, they are only allowed to go there, and those passes are also recognized by the Sri Lankan navies as well, so that this dispute is not at all occurred, right? And Sri Lankan authorities should also come up, because they are also expecting many like what say like favors from India, for example, line of credit issuance, currency swap agreements, and then like the supplying of the medicines, vaccines in this COVID period, and other helps that also must be appreciated by Sri Lankan government, and hence they should speak to the government of India. And every country knows that who is unnecessarily crossing the maritime boundary or who has just crossed it because of the lack of knowledge. So that should not be made a political issue at international level, rather that can be easily sorted out at humanitarian ground, because the water channel is so narrow. People from other side also they are involved into that business, and people from this side also they are involved, but they are the innocent people. They are not having the much information about the international waters, territorial waters, like me and you do, right? So in this sense, this issue can be very well tackled at the bilateral level at normal meetings, right? So, and the more promotion of investment, technological scope, advancements should be brought on the table. Other than these petty issues will only be wasting the time of these two countries, and other the third stakeholder like China will take benefit out of it, which India cannot actually sustain to. So that was all about the Park Strait trouble India and Sri Lanka has. Thank you.